And we are back. I've taken, meanwhile, decide break, imeisha sangapi, na meanwhile, tumerudi lini. And the discussion on the COVID-19 continues. I think we need to look at the economy now, actually the Kenyan economy. And President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday announced some concessions, I think, for people, because this is one virus that is going to affect people really hard if it goes the way we are hoping it doesn't go. Looking at the world, the US now, the Senate has approved a package to try and bail out Americans who are unable to work because of the coronavirus. I think they're planning to send $1,000 checks to each and every American so they're able to at least survive during this difficult period. The UK is doing the same thing. I think they've set aside about 200 million, if I'm not mistaken. I think also Italy and China are trying to find ways to cushion people during this difficult period. But what is Kenya doing, Joe?
Jamila, you know, those people are giving all these things, but lawyers like Kai would tell you that there's something they called nemo dat quod non habet, that you can actually not give what you don't have. So for us, we're in that situation where we really don't have much to give. So even in terms of cushioning traders and all these people who are either already being hit or are likely to be worst hit by this thing, I mean, we really do not have that luxury, I dare say. So the government is really in a tight spot here. And that meeting that was happening at State House, there's something that came out of it. I mean, the president meeting, for instance, all these bankers, the CBK governor there, and the biggest thing they announced there was this idea that banks could extend the repayment period for business loans by a year. And I think that you still have to go to your bank and, you know, sit down and agree and that sort of thing. And that is major for businesses that are in the next couple of days and months going to suffer with the impacts of this thing. I mean, this is being felt in almost every sector as we speak right now. But Yvonne, what stands out for you in terms of the economic impact that this the novel coronavirus and the resulting COVID-19 pandemic is likely to have on the economy? So, you know, many will tell you they're not able to, you know, just tell us just how far this will go. When you talked about, you know, the banks considering the extension of a loan, I don't think it's quite clear yet what happens to the interest rates during that time. You know, so it's one thing to say if I had a loan for repayment schedule for 4 years, that you'll make it 5, but what happens to the interest rates in the course of this year? Here's another thing that stands out for me. There was that new tax that was introduced.
Actually, you know, there's something they were saying at banks' cost.
Yes.
Which cost? Which cost?
And those are some of the things that need to be made clear. There was that new tax for SMEs. Remember the one that, you know, 5% of that you're supposed to pay out. You know, I think there's certain things like those that should be, you know, put on hold for now. Remember, you're supposed to actually pay it, what, on the 5th of every month. This was very controversial at the start. So these are some of the things for me. The one thing I know that Kenya can ill afford at this moment is a complete lockdown of the nation like we're seeing in Italy and Spain. Like Joe, you said, we do not have the money. The Italian Prime Minister said they're going to spend 25 billion euros, which is $28.3 billion. If you convert that to Kenya shillings, that's in its trillions, just to shield the economy. And those are the ones that have it, which is why CS Mutahi Kagwe's directives on social distancing are important. What we need to do right now, I think, among other things for the spread, but also for the economy, is to make sure we are social distancing, we're keeping the rate of infections at an all-time low, so that we do not get to the point of a lockdown. A lockdown means none of us leaves our homes. No one. Doctors, I mean, with the exception of doctors, people are just not leaving their homes, and there will be very little money that will be circulating in the economy, if at all. I mean, the economy literally grinds to a halt. So the social distancing that we're talking about now should prevent us from getting there. But even as we go, I would like to just hear, you know, from the CS for Treasury, Ukuri Atani, on what some of those additional plans would be.
There was a cabinet meeting today, and one of the issues that came out in that brief that comes from the presidential communication team was that there was a report that was tabled by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary before his colleagues for adoption, including some adjustments on the 2019-2020 budget. Remember, the president on Sunday said the government is going to recruit additional doctors and nurses and other medical personnel on short-term basis to deal with the situation. But see, our economy was struggling even before the coronavirus issue. So we are adding on to that struggle with this virus. Look, there was a target for revenue collection. If revenue collection targets have not been met previously, it is impossible to say they will be met now with the kind of a situation that we are already in. Look, our flour industry, we saw that story during our 9 o'clock bulletin. Flowers are not going out there. So that is lost revenue. Some companies are already declaring redundancies. Some employees, at least I know a few friends who have been asked to take half pay. And the situation is likely to escalate. So it is important that we all appreciate the kind of a situation that we are in, and as you say, prevent it before it goes into a worse situation. But even more importantly, there are fundamental questions that some people are asking, especially those who live hand to mouth, people who rely on a wage, daily wage. I mean, the guys we call watu wa kibarua, casuals. Some are even asking, and they may have a point, that will I stay at home and die of hunger, or I go there to earn a living for myself and my family, and possibly meet corona on the way or something like and maybe this is where now the government needs to intervene. Because already we did a census. So we let's now start making use of that data that we collected in 2019. We know how many households we have. We know who lives where. We know who needs what most. Maybe let's start using that data now so that at least we can show the sense in what we did in 2019.
I think another sector that has been greatly hit and affected is the creatives industry, and not many of us think about them. Musicians, people who depend on running events. I mean, take a look at all the events that have been cancelled
on crowds,
which we are now being told to stay away from. We heard from the Event Managers Association of Kenya. There is nothing happening. Zuhura spoke about that. So for them, they depend fully on our social spaces, on our being able to congregate. And for now, I mean, I think she mentioned one particular promoter who lost up to 40 million shillings at one point. Artists who depend on all of these, you know, and who is traveling around the country. And remember, many of our conferences and everything come from abroad. Now they're not traveling. We're not traveling anywhere. So the creatives industry, which is one that struggles anyway, even in terms of interventions, they always feel like they are, you know, left to...
Look at the hotels. Who's occupying hotels?
Interesting that you say that, because, and Linus, you would come in on this. Yesterday we had a story, actually, Asha Mwilu went to Gikomba, where there are all these people who sell second-hand clothes and all manner of things that get sold in that place. And these people depend on other people coming to see what they have, and people haggle over the price and that sort of thing. And so this social distancing thing becomes a very difficult for them, because it is directly tied to their primary source of livelihood, that you open that bill and people rush in. They call it camera. So they rush in, and there's nothing you can do about it. They have to come and touch that thing and feel it, and, you know, open it and check it, and in some instances try it out and that sort of thing. So it becomes extremely difficult for that kind of person to say, well, you know, now there's a problem, you know, can I do this? It basically means that they're choosing, they're having to make very tough choices for their lives, that, you know, either I sleep at home and die of hunger, or go out there and hope that I will not meet this thing there.
Yeah, which is why, Joe, it's always been inaccurate to describe the Kenyan economy as a universal concept. We are a country of layers of the economy.
Of many economies.
Many economies. Which is why the government must be careful in how it intends to intervene. It has to intervene in different ways and in different sectors. Not a one-fit-all. For all the measures that were announced yesterday, I'm trying to imagine what was there in it for the person you're describing in Gikomba. They don't have those loans to renegotiate because they never qualified to have any in the first place. They used to just rely on doing that daily job and making 100, 200 shillings a day. They probably own, they probably owe the mobile
the apps,
money
the
lending
apps, the money lending apps.
the money lending apps, not the banks. What happens to them? Because they'll be asking those questions. You remember when we were transitioning to the new 1,000 shilling notes, and the message from CBK was return the old notes so that you
exchange with the new notes.
Exchange with the new notes. And what were a majority of our people saying? Don't worry, we don't even have that old one. Yes, so the government must be careful and make sure that these interventions actually speak to the majority of the Kenyan population, the bulk of the people that we are now calling the economy, because they are so badly hit, especially in this scenario that is limiting movement of people. God forbid if you go into a total lockdown, we are talking of a crisis of untold proportions, because we will never have been there. And you can tell, if you look at how people are responding to this coronavirus, even the awareness campaign, some of them, especially those that rely on the daily wage, are less mindful of the facts. They're even saying, no, I have to go there. There's the matatu guy who said, wacha hiyo coronavirus inipate kwa matatu nikitafuta. Because to them, they don't think you're talking about them when you meet in State House, KEPSA, all this business sector
They just imagine they're on their own.
Yes, they don't think.
And
it
I
is
think
about them.
Robert has some people, some Vox posts, I think from residents.
And because Jamila is the one to say where we are going,
Yes.
can we just have those people?
Corona imeanza kutufukuza, basi twende mashamba.
Na leo ikiwa watalii hawatoweza kuingia, ni mahoteli yetu yatakuwa hayana biashara, ni maboti yetu hatakuwa na biashara. Kwa hivyo sisi ugonjwa utatuathiri mara mbili. Baada ya ugonjwa utatuathiri na kibiashara.
Shida hapa hakuna maji, hakuna nini. Madereva wananinunulia hii kitu ni 300, hatuna uwezo. Sisi makanga tunakaa hapa na tuna familia, hatutaki sisi kubebea ugonjwa hapa tupelekee watu wetu nyumbani.
Na tunasikia tena, usipitishe mkono wako mchafu kwa majo, bia ni vibaya ama kujipangusia jasho. Unawe.
So we want to discuss Nairobi very quickly, but Jamila says that
there's a lady, I have to say one thing. There's a lady today on a video that has been doing the rounds on social media, and what she said really, it made me think about how for people this corona is almost not true. She said, ikifika hapo kwa hiyo mtaa karibu ndo nitaamini iko hapo. You can't expect me to stop what I'm doing because ati mnaongea about it where you are. Because she says for her, you don't expect, I think they have a water problem in that area she is in Mombasa, and there's a truck that brings water. And she says, you can't expect me not to go to get water from that truck which has come to give me water just because unasema for free, just because you're saying there's this coronavirus. But I think one thing we need to keep talking about again and again is what you've said, social distancing. And somebody said that social distancing is an act of kindness, because we don't want to get to the point where tunakuwa na lockdown and people are unable to meet their daily needs. Kwa sababu kama baba hawezi fanya kazi, mama hatakula, watoto hawatakula, and it trickles down to everybody in the community. In fact, already now with children at home, it is becoming an issue. Children are in the house and they're eating all the time. Hata the bit you had actually bought and said wacha itaka reserve in case anything happens, wanakula hiyo pia. So I don't think we need to be careful to not get to that point. And again, let's be wenyewe sisi ndo tuwe wenye kujichunga. And one last thing, let's check on each other. Mental health, call relatives, find out how they're doing. Mko sawa, mko wazima, mko salama. I think this is very important because we crave that human interaction, but now we are being told don't interact so much. At least make a phone call.
Can I we have to go, Francis.
Yes.
And there is a new sanitizer at City Hall.
Yes.
And the general is not in a bottle.
Absolutely. In fact, that's where I was picking it up from, because today msemaji wetu ni Jamila. Sisi hatuna nguvu hata uwezo wa kitu. In fact, there's
at that point you throw away your phone.
I wanted to throw away my phone, but I realized that I don't have another one. So, and these are tough economic times.
Yes.
In fact, there's a lady who captured my attention. Alisema, serikali ichunge sisi vile inachunga rege na PPI.
Yes,
those are the interests that are with many people. But talking about interest, let's talk about Nairobi. There is a new sheriff in Nairobi, Major General Abdallah Badi.
I have also today created.
Yes, that is what I wanted us to play. But Robert is. I
was waiting for Jamila to say.
Let's listen to that bite.
This office will be headed by Major General Mohammed Abdallah Badi, who is here present.
Yeah, he was there present. Actually, this evening, he was out and about in town. There present too, together with a few members of his team.
This evening, huh?
Yeah, showing you that he's already taking charge. Sheriff. But it was not a surprise. Remember, about 22 days now ago, the signing of that deed of transfer. Key functions have been taken over by the national government. And what has been left with Governor Mike Sonko is simply a shell, because when you take away transport, health services, urban planning, public works, basically all the essential functions that also accompany with the resources, then you leave him with very little, maybe about 6-7 functions, but functions that are moneyless, so to say, Joe.
Yes, a friend of mine was saying that in Ndumaya sewage, because they're talking about agriculture and what agriculture happens in Nairobi. But yes, I think it was a dramatic development in the sense that in the midst of all the conversations about the coronavirus and all of these things, actually, as Yvonne was indicating earlier, we actually thought that this news briefing was going to be one big one about COVID-19, and then we saw the total takeover of the capital had actually happened. And from where I sit, Sonko may well go down as the last governor of Nairobi. I really think that this falls very squarely within the plan that has been there for Nairobi. Remember, there has been back and forth talk of metropolitan this or the other. There's a time they appointed some guy, some people into there's something they call the Nairobi Metropolitan Transport Authority. I don't know where that really ever went. But there's also the BBI report that was published in November. One of the things in there is that there will be a special status for Nairobi. So you have seen all these indications from everywhere within government circles that Nairobi shouldn't be a county, that there's been this mindset in the national government at the moment that Nairobi should be governed differently. And I guess that is informed perhaps by how important the city is, and probably some of the things that have happened, the governors that have been there, some of the things that have happened under them. Not to say it hasn't happened in other counties, but I think the stakes are higher here. I think the question that people will be asking at the end of the day is how it happened, how much involvement there has been of the Nairobi residents themselves about what really happens. We just saw now yesterday a general, one more general. The president seems to be in love with generals whenever he has a
Some people call it militarization of government.
Yes, whenever he has an issue, he will get a general to try and fix it. But I think that is the question that is going to happen. In fact, if only that, I mean, we didn't have the coronavirus situation right now, this would be a very big debate going on in Nairobi. And I think that this debate is not going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, two things stood out for me. One was, if you recall, right in the middle of the purported public participation, we got the announcement that KRA had in fact already taken over the roles of revenue collection. Yes. And then I thought, well, aren't we still collecting views? And, you know, that just told me that this was a done deal and that, you know, the public participation was just a matter of formality. There was something very important that the president said in his handover, you know, yesterday. He talked about corruption and cartels having been a big challenge in Nairobi this entire time. In fact, he even talked about recognizing that he then put together the regeneration committee, remember, that had representatives from both the national government and the Nairobi county. And he said their efforts were, and I remember his words were, inadequate. Now, for me, why did they fail? Have we audited what happened exactly? And that now he says that now this is going to be the solution. So how will this succeed where the others have failed? And remember, Nairobi has been a big issue from when we were a city council to now Nairobi County. So it seemed a little interesting for me. I did not understand how this particular NIMS, what are we calling it now?
Nairobi Metropolitan
NMS. How NMS, where NMS will succeed, how NMS will succeed where the Regeneration Committee has failed.
Tongue like it's been here for 10 years.
I know, right? And how all of the others have succeeded, considering particularly that it's not like the national government itself has a stellar record with fighting corruption. In fact, the president is on record as saying, you remember, during his first term, he said corruption is even in his backyard, in his office. So for me, the logic doesn't still add up for me that the national government taking over Nairobi will be the end of corruption and cartels when the national government itself does not have that track record, and when we don't know why any of these other efforts failed and how this one will succeed.
Linus, two things. The Nairobi Regeneration Team, chaired by Tourism Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala, is tomorrow handing over the functions formally to Major General Badi and his team. And more fundamentally, you saw KRA is already collecting revenue in Nairobi. So that is one huge function taken away from Governor Sonko's administration. Number two, you saw the chairman of the Public Service Commission, Stephen Kirogo, signing, together with the chair of the County Public Service Board, transfer of the staff in the 4 dockets that have been transferred to the national government. So clearly, in terms of reporting, these workers know who they report to. And then essentially, Major General Badi is a serious military officer, so he knows who he reports to. Look at the deputy is the PS in charge of urban planning. So clearly they know who they are reporting to, and this is for a period of 2 years, renewable.
The good general is trained to defend our borders and fight wars out there. This is the first time he's going to get into an unfamiliar territory. And Nairobi is such unfamiliar territory. You speak of the Nairobi, is it called Regeneration Committee? Now, a lot of people would be hearing of that committee for the first time tomorrow. And the question is, what are they handing over? What have they been?
They tried to clean up the rivers and do a few roads.
They've been largely invisible. Sonko has been more visible than that committee has been. But Nairobi is dogged by a lot of failed interventions by the national government. We should remember that in 1983, the Minister for Local Government, very powerful minister, Moses Mudavadi, the father of Wycliffe Mudavadi, dissolved the Nairobi City Council because of corruption. He suspended not governor, he was mayor Nathan Kahara and his entire executive, and then replaced them with a commission headed by one Mr. Mwangola, who used to be the Kenya Railways MD. Mwangola did not have any impact in City Hall. Later, in the later years, we had the Gumo Commission. And then after that, we had the Congo Commission as well. All these were interventions by State House to try and fix Nairobi. But what Major General Badi will enjoy is a lot of goodwill from a lot of city residents who feel something should be done about Nairobi.
And service delivery.
Yes, in service delivery, because Nairobi has been reduced to a joke. I don't know where it ranks in terms of the counties, but it's certainly not a leading county. So he comes in with a lot of goodwill. The other thing he enjoys is, of course, the massive support of the national government. President Uhuru Kenyatta himself will be very, very interested in running the show, in basically pushing for the agenda of the general and the committee he'll head to succeed. So he has those many things to do, but he also has this terrain to navigate. A corruption-ridden City Hall. I don't know what the record keeping is like in City Hall. The good general will have a lot of work to do, but the support he has is a lot. I think he has no reason to fail like the previous commissions. I mean, if KRA is coming in, they'll definitely come in with a better and efficient way of collecting revenue, which has been the main problem in Nairobi city. collection of revenue. A lot of revenue ends up in private pockets.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think, Ashuri, for me, I look at what happens now to Sonko, who many are saying now he's left to be almost like a ceremonial governor. Amebakishia majukumu gani?
He's being isolated.
Licensing of dogs, controlling pornography and other non-essential services. And remember,
but dogs.
Yeah, I know you have a
dogs.
soft spot.
Yeah.
But that
can we speak kindly of dogs and licensing?
But that was what has been left.
Actually, there are about 10 functions that are not very major.
But the big ones, health, transport,
They
planning, development, public works and all that, which together have about a budget of over 20 billion zimeenda sasa sio yake anymore. Remember, the guy also still has a case in court. Remember the 357 million graft case. Other than that, there are other cases that have dogged him, including multi-million shillings garbage tender wars. So Sonko akona mambo mengi ambayo anamfuata na sasa, because he's clearly not running Nairobi anymore, I foresee maybe some of these issues coming back to haunt him.
He'll get more time to attend to the court case.
Actually, it has been described as a bloodless coup, so to say, in Nairobi, because, and you could see where it was coming from. There were concerns initially. There are thousands of planning approval applications pending. I think the most disorganized department in Nairobi County government is the planning department. And this was a concern, because how long does it take for you to get an approval for construction? And these were the investors are, and probably that is what could have triggered the national government intervention. But also look at some of the tasks that were assigned the National Nairobi Metropolitan Services team, including a very expensive program, Nairobi Railway Master Plan.
And I think the president is looking for two things that really are lacking at City Hall. One is integrity, and two is discipline. Is that the reason probably he's gone for an Air Force general? Possibly. Because generals are trained to work a certain way. He has his name on the line. I don't think he's coming to City Hall to spoil his name and his career badly. So the pressure to just deliver efficiently like soldiers do, the pressure to deliver in a way that is keeping to integrity standards is going to be on the shoulders of the general.
This is the question of oversight, because you remember there was that concern by county assembly members, so what are we going to be doing? What will be our functions? But there seems to be this arrangement that accountability and oversight functions will be both at the national level and at the county level. And the team being asked to provide annual reports to the county assembly and to parliament. So tells you this was well thought out initially. And
Francis, the general is from the Air Force, so talking of aerial views.
Oh yeah, I see what you've done there.
And I think it's now time to take this home team, and Gashuri tunaanza na wewe leo.
Mimi?
Yes.
Aya, great.
Jamila amesema.
Jamila amesema.